Our next step is going to be to access the data. What's really important here. Skulls are neat, need the data. So let's get at the data. So now that we already have this for loop here with our object, remember this was an object iterator. Well, we're going to make a new iterator here called from a generic list, not from the objects. And let's just call this PSIRT data. Okay, so now we have the PSIRT data. Well, what do we want that data to be? Well, you see how it's been invoked in the subprogram, and our skulls are from this invoke subprogram. Well, now we have the data list. We're going to just plug our data straight in here. So now we have this PSIRT data that we can work with here. All right, and that's the key to all of these next steps. Right, so invoke a new subprogram, generic list. You'll get it here in your invoke subprogram. Plug it into your original invoke subprogram data. All right, we're going to build on that and start accessing our index values and placing the text in the next few steps. Stay tuned. Now that we've accessed our data, let's go ahead and fill it in with our text. So the first thing I think we should maybe do is go get the score. And we can put the text, the label, and the score, and maybe right under the skull so it's clear. And then we'll affect the colors and things like that based on the score itself later in the videos. And I found, I don't know if it's going to work, but I found a font that, I'm going to have some fun with the fonts. We might as well. So let's go ahead and add a new text object here, right? Shift A, and we want text. And let's go ahead and change the text here, the geometry of the text to make it 3D. So I don't know, like what's 0.25? That's too much, right? Like 0.10. Make it a little puffy text, and let's give it a resolution of 8. And let's make it center and center. And let's offset the spacing by 1.25. Maybe a little more, 1.50. Spread out the text. Can we make that a little, is it thick enough? Maybe make it a little bigger with a, oh, I see, I did the depth. Let me not do the depth. Let me do the extrude here, 0.25. Yeah, that's pretty good. Don't worry about the position. We'll worry about the position later. And now let's go ahead and change the font. And I found this font. Let's see if it's any good, if it's fun. Merlin 3D fonts. Shadow of the Dead. Yeah, it doesn't render. That's a real shame. Let's try to find a fun font to indicate the danger of the, right? Let's just danger font. Well, that'd be kind of fun. Download that. If we can get it to render in Blender as a font. I guess it's, let's just take the straight on one. And that Shadows of the Dead was no good. Let's try this danger font. I don't know. And I'm not going to waste too much time on fonts, but I thought it'd be fun to have some sort of, yeah, there we go. That's very nice. Okay, and let's, the material, again, we're going to worry about the materials later. Meaning we're going to add colors to it depending on the severity of the CVE later. So let's go ahead and hide this. And now in our programmatic world, right? And actually, if I call this text here, what I want to really do is say CVE score label. And in here, I'm going to instantiate, object instantiator, that CVE score label. And again, it's coming from the data. That's how many instances I want. And now I'm going to add it to my for loop. So I'm going to do a new object list here. And we're going to call this object list CVE score underscore labels with an S, and then we're going to plug it into our object here. There we go. Now we can work with it. So we're just going to do very much what we did to the original one and transform first where it sits on the map. So let's first just plug in the data here so we know that that's what we're working with. And really we want it on the same vector location as the skulls, but offset by a little bit, right? So maybe what we can do here is just copy and paste the vector and get rid of that and plug the vector into here and place that in here and then offset it by, say, 3, right? And now let's rotate that original CVE score by 90 and regenerate the CVE scores. So now they face forward and they're centered and they look very nice. Now we're going to offset them because this is the label, so they're going to have to be over here a little bit. So let's go ahead and offset them in the, see the X, so what we want to do is put another math node in here and change that to subtract, and let's subtract it by, 1 or 2. Now we're going to have to spread everything apart a little bit more. So let's make that 10. Whoops, wrong one. Let's make that 5. It's the side spacing, so let's multiply that by 10. There we go, and spread everything out a little bit. All right, so now once we plug in the value, we're going to have to readjust it because I believe it's a pretty long text. And that might be a little too low, maybe a little higher, closer to the skull. So maybe that'll be a 4, like that. All right, so it's coming together nicely, but what are we missing? I don't want it to say text, right? I want it to say, and I'm going to refer to our data here, I want this particular field here, Common Vulnerability Score Base System Score. Now that's big, and we're going to have to move it all the way over because of the size of it. But that's what I'd like, and we're going to have to spread everything out accordingly. So that is index number, right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, actually 0, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. So we want 10 here in our index. So what we're going to do is plug in this PSIRT data. We're going to get an element from there and plug that text value into the object. I think that's what we need to do. So we're going to do Shift A, and we're going to, actually, I'm going to just do Control A, get list element. Okay, so we want a list element, and we're going to make this particular item, make sure that you do this, change it to a generic list. All right, and the index here was 10, and we want it from the data. Okay, so index 10. Right? Now this object here, we want to change the value of the text to be this element. Right? Makes sense so far? So now, sitting here as the element, let's convert this to a text output. So what we need is a Control A, convert, and we're going to convert to text. And what we want to convert is that element 10, convert. Well, what we need though is, right, convert what text? And we need to plug it into this object. So what we need is a text object output here, and we're going to take this object and slide it down here, and we're going to connect the object back into here, and now we can plug our text in here and turn that on, and hey, what do you know? And again, like I said, it's all overrunning. So let's spread everything apart a little bit more. How about 30? Give ourselves lots of room, right? Pretty cool. Common vulnerability scoring system base score. Oops, I should have a colon in there. Let's fix that up real quick. Again, we just need to go into the Jinja template. And I missed the colon. No, there should be a colon. Maybe it's not rendering. I'm not sure what happened to the colon. It's been stripped away, it looks like. I thought I had a colon here. Common vulnerability score with the colon. Well, anyhow, that's unfortunate, but that's okay. So now we have to really offset that. It's very big, right? So we're going to want to move that way over and maybe make the skull larger, right? So let's get to this text, and we're going to go to the text properties and the offset here again. And offset X, right? So I think, well, actually, no, we just do it here with our math node. Subtract 2, let's subtract 10, 15, and you see it's still pretty close to that other one, and maybe make it 12. That's not so bad, but they're still pretty close together. So let's make this a healthy 40 separation, and now we have room. We might even make that bigger because we have a lot of big text. And you know, I could make that CVE base score, but I like to actually put this text so it's nice and human readable. So now let's put our score in, right? And we just repeat the same process. So I want to use the same text and all the same properties of this score label. So I'm going to copy and paste the score label, and I'm going to rename the parent property here to CVE score value and hide it. And then I'm going to do the same steps, right? So I need to make an instancer. And we're going to change the instancer here to the CVE score value. Plug that in here for our instances. Add an iterator for an object list. Change the name, CVE score values. It shows up here to be instantiated. And let's just, we're going to make this a little easier as we go for us to work with. And we plug our object in. All right, now we have to transform the output and plug it into the same, really the same transform here. Well, the same values anyway, but a different object. So let's copy this. And we're going to take the same vector. Well, see, that's going to subtract it a little bit differently, right? So we may have to put a new math node in to change the position of the label, right? So we need a new vector for sure to plug in here. And the x, instead of coming from this minus this 12, right, we're going to take the same result here, here, and I don't have the object plugged in yet, right? So, but because I want the label, I'm going to need another list element and make sure that this is a generic list. We want our list of data, but we want object 11 here, and we want to convert it to text, and we want a new text output, and the object in this case is going to be that label, the text is going to be that text, the object is going to be that object. Now you may have noticed a dramatic pause here and that it looks like we've made a mistake. We haven't made a mistake. Our font selection doesn't render numbers, it looks like. They're there, right? You can see the dot. So let's delete these rendered versions and let's go in here and change the font to, I like the danger font for the text, but obviously it doesn't work. And I have this alarm clock font that I'm going to use for digits anyway. So let's do that. Let's give it like the digit based score, right? So now I have to offset this. So this here was offset. I don't offset it here. I offset it down here, right? So now I need to offset this text. So where is our, I have subtract 0, right? So instead of subtracting 12, let's go ahead and add, I don't know, 3. How's that? Maybe a little too far from the score. Let's add 1. Maybe not far enough. Yeah, let's line it up on the X here and try to get it kind of in line with that, right? So, I don't know, 2, maybe 1.5. 1.5 is nice. And if we swing this around, they should be the same thickness, and yeah, they're all the same orientation. Okay, so that's pretty good. This is pretty massive. I'm wondering maybe we should line them up where this is in the middle of the skull and this is in the middle underneath. Maybe that's better. So let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to move this latest object. I guess we're not going to transform it that way at all. So we can get rid of this, put that back in there as the X, right? And then same as this score here, we're going to get rid of that and plug the vector in there. And now, whoops, I didn't want to do that. Let me undo what I just did there. Okay, so we don't want the subtraction. And that comes into this x-axis. Right, so we're going to get rid of the subtract there, but move this in here. Right, and now they're lined up, but now we have the overlapping z-axis here. So maybe make that 3. I mean, that's pretty radical. That's pretty rad. Maybe we can increase the size of the skulls. So let's go ahead and get rid of our skulls and go to our original skull. Properties here, and let's scale it up by 5. Make nice big skulls. Maybe that's too big, maybe 3, but let's see what it looks like. Ooh, that's nice. We just have to move them up higher on the z-axis, right? But I like that, nice and big. So let's move them up to 7 on the z. 6? 6 is a little tight. Let's do 6.5. Yeah, there we go. Pretty cool. Alright, now we have all kinds of other information to deal with. I think I'm going to leave this as just the front-facing information in terms of text. But now, I mean, it's no good rendered in darkness like this. If I take, this is what it looks like rendered right now. So what are we going to do next? What are we going to do next? Well, let's talk about it. We have a skull that's metallic and has a nice clear coat. I don't want to color that object. It doesn't look very nice, but what I can do is light it. So what we can do is add some lighting system, and it's going to be simple. One light in a spotlight, and we're going to adjust the color of that light based on a scale of the CVE, from red to yellow to not yellow, neutral, right? We don't want to make it green because that's not, doesn't match. It's still a vulnerability. But we'll move it up from a neutral skull to yellow at 5, let's say, and then at 7.5 to 9, we'll have another, hot pink, and then 9 and above will make it red. Now the text elements, we can give them materials, right, so that the lettering and the numbers appear in the color appropriate to the vulnerability. So I'm going to work on that myself a little bit. Once I have it working, I'll bring it back into the video. Stay tuned. The exciting stuff is coming.